Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guest, we provide the knowledge, skills, insight, and inspiration you need to find your happy. Hey there, lawyers. I am excited about this week's episode because it is very different from episodes that I've done before, and I will be chatting with the lovely Veronica Peterson. Veronica is the talent behind Leave Law Behind Instagram, and that's where we first connected when I had Casey Berman on the show. She is actually a client of Casey Berman's who has successfully left the law, sold her house, and is moving into an RV to travel the country and pursue a passion project. I mean, holy inspiration, Batman. It's such an amazing story, but if you guys haven't heard my interview with Casey, I'd ask that you pause this episode, go back to episode 107, listen to that, and then come back to hear my chat with Veronica. I think it would really help you guys understand kind of the work that Veronica had to do to get to the point that she's at today. And I definitely don't want you guys thinking that Casey is out there getting lawyers to sell all their stuff and live in a van by the river, because that is certainly not the case. All right, back to the amazing conversation that I had with Veronica. So on today's episode, we really dive into what it takes to push through all those fears that come with leaving the law to pursue something non-traditional. And in Veronica's case, she didn't just leave a traditional job. I mean, she left a traditional lifestyle. She had the house, the six-figure salary, the dog, the husband, and she had to turn it all on its head in order to pursue something that she was really excited about. And as you guys can imagine, there's so much that comes with that. And it's just not just the physical act of doing it, it's the mindset shift required to believe that you can do it. There's a lot of real truths in this episode about what it takes to move through that process and what it looks like to pursue your passion. So I really hope you guys love this episode as much as I enjoyed chatting with Veronica. Enjoy! Welcome back to the Happy Lawyer Project, lawyers. I am super excited, as usual, to introduce today's guest. As you guys heard in the intro, this is somebody who has been through Casey's Leave the Law Behind program, and so we'll be talking a little about that today and everything else that Veronica is up to. So I hope everybody will give Veronica a big, warm welcome. Welcome, Veronica.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, pleasure is all mine. And I think it'd be great if you could start. I've given a little bit of intro to folks, but I'd love if you could tell us a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Veronica. I live in Reno, and I am a newly retired attorney. And well, right now I do a lot. Let's see here. I just started kind of working with a health and wellness company called Isogenics, promoting products that have made a difference in mine and my husband's lives. I am now the social media manager for Leave Law Behind, which is the career coaching service for unhappy attorneys that Casey started. And I absolutely love working with him and helping spreading the message that he has. And then I also created and run The Remarkable Golden, which is my passion project. It is why I left the law, and it is a social media project aimed at spreading positivity and empowerment. It's inspired by my husband and my golden retriever and his very unique birthmark. And what we do is we go around our community and challenge people to share what makes them remarkable. And we are actually preparing to take this project across the country on an 8-month road trip in an RV. And we're going to tell the stories of the remarkable people of the U.S. through his social media account, through a blog, and hopefully a podcast, and ultimately through hopefully a children's book, a travel book, a coffee table book, and however else I can think of to expand this project and get the word out and show some positivity in a time where it's desperately needed.
Well, I'm all about positivity, so that's why I was so excited to have you on and talk about this project, because I think there's something so brave and really simple about the project, which I love so much. So before we dive into that, let's take a big step back and talk a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today. So why don't we start with why you became a lawyer and kind of how you felt in the law and the transition?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so why I became a lawyer, that's a great question. And I think, like a lot of people who find themselves unhappy in the law, I kind of just fell into becoming a lawyer. I was always excelled in school. I was smart. I was good at writing. My parents liked to tell me I was good at arguing. And law just seemed like a prescribed path. It just seemed like what would fit with my skills and capabilities that I've, had from a young age. So I went to undergrad at Gonzaga University up in Spokane, Washington, and I majored in sociology and women's and gender studies, which I loved. And for a brief time, I thought maybe I'll be a sociology professor, but ultimately decided to go to law school because I thought it would, be a success. I would have success in the career. I knew it would give me a comfortable living. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. I never really worked with lawyers. I didn't have lawyers in my family, my close family. So I didn't really explore the career like I probably should have. But in any event, it got me where I am today. And so I went to law school at Pitt in Pittsburgh. I'm from Reno. So my husband and I moved across the country to Pittsburgh, sight unseen. We'd never been there before, but we had this dream of going to move where the Steelers play because we're both huge Steelers fans. So, so we did that, and we thought, oh my gosh, we'll go to Steelers games all the time, but forgot that we would be broke students. So that didn't happen. I excelled in law school. I did well. And then I moved back to Reno and got a job. My first job out of law school was at a smaller firm, and we did mainly HOA law. And I did not like that. I didn't like working exclusively for homeowners associations. And
real quick, why did you think you were going to like it and you didn't like it, or did you kind of fall into that as well?
I kind of fell into that as well. So during law school, I worked as an extern for the bankruptcy court, and I liked it just fine. I always excelled in law school in my code-based classes. Like I did well in bankruptcy. I did well in secure transactions, commercial transactions. I think my mind kind of worked that way. So I had convinced myself that I liked bankruptcy, even though when I look back on it, I didn't actually like bankruptcy. I thought it was so boring. But, it was in that time where, the law was my path. And I was like, yes, this is fascinating. I should do bankruptcy. So the HOA practice that I worked at also had another attorney who had a small bankruptcy practice. And so I was referred to that firm from the judge that I worked for. And so I worked for that small firm my second summer, my third year remotely while I was in law school, and then was offered a job after graduation. And it just kind of fit. I got along with the owner of the firm, and it just seemed like a good fit. And I thought, maybe I'll grow to like HOA law. She had built, she kind of was known as the HOA lawyer in Reno. And so she had built a, really successful practice. And I thought, this is something that I could learn a lot about and maybe excel at. So I thought that maybe that would be my path.
And then at what point did you realize, like 30 minutes into your first day, or was it like?
Yeah, it wasn't, I would say maybe like after a year.
Okay.
I realized HOA law isn't for me. And that's primarily what this practice is. And, she was, I think, kind of building me up to ultimately maybe take over the practice someday. And I just didn't want to get too far into that, knowing that I didn't want that to be the only part of my practice. I thought maybe I should try some other areas of the law and see if something else sparks my interest. So that's what I decided to do. That's why I ended up going to a regional mid-sized firm that had, more diverse practice areas and more attorneys working there and more opportunity to get exposed to different practice styles and different personalities and different areas of the law. I thought maybe that would help me to find satisfaction in the law.
And I take it that didn't go well.
No. So, I joined that firm in September, and I was happy for maybe about 3 months, just with a new job, meeting new people, new challenges, wanting to impress all the partners. And I took the position as a litigation associate, and I kind of knew in the back of my head I don't know if litigation is 100% for me. I just don't have the personality traits that align with being a litigator. I don't love the adversarial nature of litigation. I also don't love just sitting in my desk and writing all day. And so I think I took the job hoping that somehow I would learn to love it, or, that I would find my niche within litigation, or that maybe if I hated litigation, I could transition to transactional work because this was a big firm. But after about 3 months there, I kind of realized, man, I'm not happy. And maybe it's not just the type of law that I'm doing, but maybe I'm not happy as a lawyer. And that was a hard realization that kind of took then the next year to flush out and kind of realize, what I should do, or think about what I should do next. So then I worked at that firm for about a year and 3 months, and I really struggled. I really, really struggled. I was really unhappy. I was struggling with severe depression and anxiety, and I, got to the point where I could barely do my work because, I'm sure some of the unhappy lawyers who are listeners, if you've experienced depression and severe anxiety, that one of the issues is concentration and not being able to finish tasks. And that was certainly one of the struggles that I had, is just not being able to focus on my work, not being able to finish tasks, not meeting deadlines. And that was never me. I knew, I was always doing well in school. I always excelled in school, and I always wanted my teachers and professors to think highly of me. And so kind of the person that I had become in my professional life as a lawyer was not consistent with who I had been my whole life. And I think it was because of, the depression that I was experiencing as a lawyer. And so, I knew that something had to change. I knew that I had to make a move, or else I would continue down that path. And frankly, my relationships and my health couldn't stand it any longer. My marriage was suffering because of how unhappy I was. And so I knew that a change had to happen. So that's what I did.
That's a really, I think, important story to share, because so many people go through that. And it's one of those situations that's really hard for most people to get out on their own. You really do need support to kind of pull yourself out of that situation. In my experience, how did you go about making kind of the steps, or reaching out to the people you need to reach to, or, how did you transition out of that space into kind of realizing that you needed to leave the law and take action to resolve the issues?
Yeah, absolutely. So I most certainly relied on, my husband and my family and my friends. Pretty early on, my parents realized, okay, we gotta switch gears here. Veronica is very unhappy. And, while we are so proud of her and her accomplishments in the law, we gotta switch gears. And so my family got on board pretty quick with, let's think about what you can do to transition. And then I found...
Were you surprised by that? I know that a lot of people worry about disappointing other people, and that's why they don't want to share that they aren't happy or that they want to leave the law. And did you have any of that, or did you kind of know that your parents and your husband would be behind you no matter what you chose?
Yeah. So, I definitely knew that they would be behind me, but it was hard. It was hard because, my parents have always been so proud of me. And, my dad would brag about me to people he ran into at the supermarket. Oh, Veronica's a lawyer. She's doing so well. She works at this firm. And I didn't want that narrative to have to change. And I think for them, seeing me in the place that I was at over the, past year or so in practice, they knew that something had to happen. And so I think that for them it was, okay, well, she's got to get happy and she's got to make a change. And, if that's a change out of the law, then we're still going to support her no matter what. And, it was the same for my husband. He knew that I was really struggling. And so he kind of got behind me. For him, it was a little bit of a different conversation, just because, me being unhappy in the law and wanting to leave the law meant serious financial change for us. And so he had different fears than my parents had. They want us to succeed. But with Brian and I, my husband and I, it was, okay, well, I 100% support you, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do about that financially? We have a mortgage and student loans and car payments. And so we had to deal with all of that, but they were extremely, extremely supportive. And once we kind of got to the point that, I can't continue like this, it was, okay, how are we going to move on? And let's all move on together. So that was great. And then I found Casey. I found the Leave Law Behind program, and having, I still remember the first day I Googled, unhappy lawyers who want to leave the law. And I found Casey's program, or I found his blog, and I was a reader of his blog for a long time, and really, really that brought me to life, just knowing that there was other attorneys who were in the same boat that I was in. I wasn't this crazy person who hated the law and, I should just toughen up and figure it out. There were people who were going through the same thing that I was, and people that had successfully gotten out of it, either on their own or through the help of Casey's coaching program. And so that made a huge difference. And, having a phone call with him, I had a phone call with him. He offers free consult calls. And I still remember my free consult call where I told him, I have this crazy idea. You might think it's kind of crazy, but I have this social media project with my dog. And I explained the Remarkable Golden to him. And he said, you do me a favor and never preface explaining the project to anybody else by saying, this is kind of crazy and silly and stupid. He was like, I can tell that you're passionate about this project and it's a really cool project. He was like, so you should go for it. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, yes, it's not crazy. It's not a crazy dream, and I can make this work. So that was really, really helpful for me, is having him as a resource as well.
It's really nice to hear kind of the way the two of you connected, because I often feel that what we need sometimes to pursue that idea is somebody else to believe in the idea. And somebody who, doesn't necessarily have to believe in it. Like, if my husband supports me, which he almost always does, that's great, or my parents. But to have an independent third party say, that's not crazy, you sound excited about it and you should do it, is so validating.
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge because, the same with me. I had told my parents, and they didn't quite understand it. Frankly, I think they still don't quite understand how I'm going to make money on this project, but they've always been 100% supportive. And Brian, my husband, has always been supportive, and my friends have always been supportive. And so talking to somebody who I really respected, who had built this career coaching job and who had been a lawyer, and to have him really say, this is something that is important, and this is something that you should focus on, and this is something that's real and will bring value to the world. His program is all about what unique traits do you have that will bring value to the world in a way that you're not doing as a practicing attorney. And, he kind of helped me see, okay, no, this isn't just some crazy project, but this is a way for me to bring value to the world in a way that I would never do sitting in my desk as a litigation associate.
Yeah, I think one of the ways me and Casey really align is that we both are firm believers in the fact that if you're happy, whatever you do, you're going to do better. And that for me, I think promoting happiness, and I think it's very similar to the project you're working on, in itself has value because it amplifies everybody else's value.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And it's funny, I got to the point where I was like, I think I could have put my nose to the grindstone. I could have made partner. I could have been a successful attorney, but I wouldn't have been happy doing it. And I got to the point where I realized, I wouldn't want to hire me as a lawyer because this job doesn't make me happy. This job isn't my passion. And that was a really big transformative kind of thought process for me, is working through the fact that I wouldn't hire myself as an attorney because this isn't my passion. This isn't what drives me. And this project gives me so much happiness. I so enjoy having conversations with people and challenging them to think about what makes them remarkable, and not only think about it, but articulate it to a complete stranger. And seeing how powerful of an experience it is for them gives me so much joy and fulfillment. And that's why I'm pushing so hard. And that's why I'm so driven to make this project bigger and to do what I'm doing, bring it across the country.
So I want to dive into the project, but I also want to highlight what you just noted, because I think it's really important to realize that there is a moral imperative associated with being a lawyer and being mentally well in your practice. And I think that for people who are not happy in the law, they, to me, have a near ethical responsibility to take care of themselves so that they can serve their clients.
Yep, I 100% agree.
Aware enough to know that and to take kind of control of that is, I think, quite powerful. So I just wanted to note that and say that I'm completely on board. And, even though this is the Happy Lawyer Project, I don't think that everybody can be happy in the law, but I think that everybody who's been through law school can find happiness in life, and that law school doesn't have to feel like a death sentence, which I think some people think of it as, is that, I've kind of made my bed, now I have to sleep in it, and that's just that.
Oh, completely. I worked with, quite a few lawyers at my firm who felt that way and were so shocked when I said, I'm going to leave the law and I'm going to pursue this other project. They were like, oh, what? That's an option? And it absolutely is an option. And I really felt like I agree that you have an ethical obligation as an attorney to deal with your unhappiness if it's affecting your practice. And for me, it was. And I knew that I had to make change. And so that's what I did.
All right. So I want to dive into your project, but I want to ask this question before we do. How did you get over kind of the fears associated with leaving the law? Because you were fairly early in your practice, in your career. And I know for a lot of people who have student loans, who have a mortgage, who have, there's this fear that you're never going to make money again, that you're going to be living under a bridge, and that once you get out, you can't get back in. So you better make this decision and make it wisely. I mean, how did that manifest for you? And then how did you kind of overcome that?
Yeah. So there were, oh my gosh, so many fears. Certainly money was a huge fear, especially because in my family, I am the breadwinner. My 6-figure salary funded our lives. It paid our mortgage, paid my student loans, paid my car payment. And so for a couple of months, the narrative was, well, I can't leave because we would have to sell our house. Ultimately, I got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. I was so unhappy that going into the office every day was like a real struggle for me. And so Brian and I kind of had the conversation, well, this can't continue. We got to make a change. So we just kind of started making small changes, trying to save a little bit of money and thinking, okay, well, what if we did sell the house? What if we, I like a lot of lawyers who get their first job that comes with a 6-figure salary, my life expanded to my salary when I first got it. And we kind of had to scale back and say, okay, maybe we don't need all the things that we had been paying for and doing, and we could find ways to save enough money for me to be able to quit. And I was at the point where I had resolved to even get a server job. I was like, I don't care. I have to leave. I have to be done with this. I will wait tables if we will be hungry and out of our house. So I haven't had to do that, which I'm thankful for. But we definitely had to scale back. And the other part of the fear around money was talking with Casey about the fact that money is abundant. As lawyers, sometimes we think, oh, billing hours is the only way to make money. Well, that's absolutely not true. There is infinite ways to make money in this world, not only in a law practice, as a lawyer, but in so many other ways. And I just kind of opened myself up to the other ways that I could make money through social media, through affiliate advertising on social media with my project, through the health and wellness company that I was already buying products from. I kind of was like, well, why haven't I ever explored the opportunity to share that with others? So I just kind of opened my eyes to the fact that there are so many different ways that I can make money that don't involve being a lawyer, and I just have to hustle hard at other things. And so that's why I've kind of created other opportunities for myself to make money. And talking with Casey about the fact that money is infinite was really, really transformative and really helpful for me. So we kind of got over that. And the other fear that I have that I think a lot of lawyers have is like the fear of losing your identity as a lawyer. I really felt proud when I was able to tell people that I'm a lawyer. It garnished a certain amount of respect, especially because I'm younger. People are like, wow, you're so young, you're an attorney. And I was like, well, I'm going to lose that. And what am I going to tell people now? Oh, I manage my dog's social media account. They're not going to take me seriously. And so I kind of had to get over that fear of like, well, what will I be? I've worked my whole life for this, and I've had my eyes on the prize, the prize of being an attorney my whole life. But for me, it was, okay, so what? I stay miserable and unhappy so I can tell people I'm a lawyer? Like, that's not worth it. So I kind of had to get over my, what do people think about me? And, are people going to judge me? I just kind of had to work through that and realize that my happiness is more important than what people think about me.
I love this. I'm actually reading a book right now called That Holy Shit Moment, I think. And I learned just today, that moment that you had is called discontent crystallization. And it's that moment in time where your discontent surpasses your fears.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. That's exactly what it was for me. It was like, I can't keep doing this. So we're going to move forward.
Yep. So hopefully, and so the book kind of talks about all the different ways you can have that epiphany, like life-changing moment in your life. And discontent crystallization is just one of them. So ideally, you wouldn't need to get to the point where you're so unhappy that you just have to move forward, but that's certainly one thing that catalyzes people into a new life. So it's interesting that that's how it came to fruition for you. Let's talk about, on a happier note, your project.
Yes.
So you mentioned the RV, do you have a plan for where you're going?
Yeah. So the concept of traveling the country also kind of came to light in my dissatisfaction with the law and, our talks about how I could quit my job. And so we ultimately did decide to sell our house. Our house is on the market right now and we're working on selling it. And we kind of, I thought, it's funny, when I started the social media project, I thought, oh, a social media project with dogs. Like, of course it will just garnish like 100,000 followers overnight because social media is super easy. Well, that's not the case. So social media is really hard, and it's hard to gain followers, and it's hard to gain traction and bring attention to your project. And so Brian and I started talking about ways that we could expand the project. We knew we wanted to expand it beyond Reno. So we thought, okay, maybe we'll just take weekend trips here and there to places that we can drive to, and we'll drive Judge to, San Francisco and maybe over to Salt Lake City, and we will meet more people and expand the project that way. And then somehow that morphed into, well, why don't we just take him across the whole country and really do this? And so that's what we decided to do. And so with the proceeds of our house sale, we will buy an RV, and we will hopefully, the goal is to start in March, mid-March, and we will travel throughout the whole country for, about 8 months. And we're going to go to we're going to go throughout the whole lower 48, and we're going to meet as many people as we can. We're going to find people and have them share what makes them remarkable. And we're going to spread this project as much as we can.
I hope you don't take this the wrong way, because I don't mean it in a bad way, but how do you keep the fear back now? Because I think that there is that exciting moment where you're like, I'm quitting the law. And I think that, at least for me, I love transitions. So I love the quitting of something and the starting of something new. I love that in-between space that feels really hard and really like you're driving towards something and moving away from something and all of that stuff. But then there's this period where you're kind of suspended between both, and you're like, what am I doing? And I suspect that you're in that moment now.
Yeah. Don't take it the wrong way at all. And yes, I am in that moment because I quit my job and we're not planning to leave until March. So I have these like couple of months where I had built in this time because I wanted to really, first of all, kind of get back to me. And I already feel like a different person. I feel truly like myself again. And so this time has already been so beneficial for me. And I'm so glad that I took this time. And the other part of this time was that I planned to really start, really, really work on the Remarkable Golden and give it my all and work on ways that I could promote the project and different things I can do, how I can spread the message across to multiple different people, young to old, and and ways that I could partner with different organizations. And so I've just been spending a lot of time brainstorming and thinking about the ways that I can really bring this message to as many people as possible. And so that's been really fun. But I definitely have had moments like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But what drives me I'm a very driven person. And what drives me the most is the fact that other people think that this is a total pipe dream and is going to fail. I haven't had people say it to my face like, oh, this project will fail. But I most certainly know that certain people in our lives think that we are absolutely crazy and think that this won't work and that we're just going on this vacation and that we're absolutely crazy to leave a 6-figure job, security and safety for this pipe dream that this project will work. And that honestly drives me so much, is wanting to have this project succeed, to prove people that this is real and this will work. And so that's what fuels me. That's what helps me keep my fears at bay, is just knowing that I want this to work so hard. And that's what I can control. I can control how hard I work for this. And, I have moments where I have fears when I think too far in advance, when I think, okay, well, what if in 6 months, it hasn't gained the traction that I want? Or what if I can't learn video editing, because that's a big part of the project that I want to do, is do video, but I have no experience doing that. But how I keep myself from letting those fears control me is just by remembering that all I have is today. All I have is today and what I can accomplish today. And so I just try to remember that what I work on today will help fuel the project's success. And so I try to keep myself moving each and every day like that.
I love your motivation. And I think that having that type of drive and motivation is exactly the type of thing that, so many people have good ideas like that, let's be honest, but so many people don't have the drive, the motivation, the commitment to bring those ideas to fruition. And I think that makes all the difference. And I also, while I'm thinking of it, want to recommend that you check out Tasha Cohen's YouTube channel, One Big Happy. She's a lawyer, practices in DC, and she has grown her YouTube channel, in like a year, and now makes over a 6-figure income off of it. And she runs a video course. And she's fantastic. And her and I met a couple years ago and are, online friends.
Yep.
So I think she might be a really good resource. She's such a wonderful, generous teacher when it comes to growing your audience and creating a profitable project.
Oh, that would be huge. That sounds like such a wonderful resource.
So yes. So let's address kind of the elephant in the room before we transition into the next segment. I know there's lots of people out there who are like, how much was your house worth? Is this going to pay for the whole year? Like, are you independently wealthy? You said you have student loans. Like, you said you're worried about money, but do you have a plan about money? Is your husband working? Like, how are you financing this project at this point?
Yes. So we are not independently wealthy. We don't have a nest egg. We don't have a bunch of savings. In fact, we have a lot of debt with my student loans, and Brian has student loans too. My husband's a carpenter and went to trade school while we were in Pittsburgh. And so while he doesn't have the same amount of student loans that I have, he does have some. And so we were lucky enough to buy a house 2 years ago in Reno, and the Reno real estate market has really taken off. And so we hope to make enough money with the sale of our house to pay off Brian's small amount of student loans, buy an RV, and fund the trip for 8 months on a very limited budget in case we don't make a single cent on the trip. So we are really using the sale of our house to fund this trip. And that was a hard decision for us because this was our first house. It's in our perfect neighborhood. It's a 3-bedroom house. We expected to bring our first baby. We don't have kids yet, but we expected to bring our first baby home here. We didn't think of it as our forever home, but we certainly thought of it as longer than a 3-year home. So it was certainly a hard choice for us, and we thought about renting it, but we needed the money. We needed the money of the sale of our house. And so that was the decision that we made. We've also thought about doing a Kickstarter campaign to fund the project. And we have the small amount of money that my husband actually, unfortunately, was injured at work. And so he hasn't been at work. So that's also been complicated. You get money through workers' compensation, but it's not what he used to be making while he was at work. So we just kind of decided that we have to sell the house, and that's what we have to do. And with our student loans, there's great income-driven repayment plan options because my student loans are with the federal government. So we're exploring those. And we're really going to, we're not going to buy a $100,000 RV and live in the lap of luxury on this trip. We're going to buy a $10,000 used RV and really budget ourselves so that we can afford to do this. And hope that over time the project allows us to make money and that we make money in other different ways. But yeah, it was the sale of our house.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I hope your husband is recovering and that's,
Yes.
all resolving itself, because I know that can be challenging, dealing with a loved one who's been injured.
Yeah, it's been hard.
But then I also want to quickly note to people, because I know there are people out there who hear your story and they think, well, I don't have a house to sell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a 6-figure salary that I was, been working at for the last few years. I don't have a husband who's been contributing. And I get it. Like, everybody has a different story and everybody has different resources. But what you should take away from Veronica's story is that we all have access to something, and it can be uncomfortable to tap into that. So it's not an easy decision to sell your home. It may not be an easy decision to ask to borrow money. It may not be an easy decision to take out a personal loan. It may not be an easy decision to take on a second job. But if you have something in your life that you're passionate about and you have something that you're committed to, it's going to take some tough decisions and some risk. And you just have to figure out where in your life you're able to leverage in order to fund that choice.
I completely agree. And I remember, because I thought the same thing. I would see stories of people who did X, Y, and Z and who pursued their passion. And I thought the same thing. I can't do that because I don't have, I'm not independently wealthy. Brian and I have too much debt. We have the house. My income supports our entire life. I can't quit. I can't. And finally the conversation was, well, let's look at what we do have. What do we have? What are our assets? What options do we have? We explored the personal loan. We explored, a lot of different options. And it was a really, really hard decision to sell the house. But that just worked with what we were planning to do with the trip. But there are a number of ways that people can, and it's hard choices. If it's something that you really, really want, if taking a new path, if taking a job that pays less or pursuing some sort of passion project is what you really want, then you're right. It does involve some hard decisions and some sacrifices.
I could chat with you forever, but I want to transition into the next segment of the show, which I now call the Happiness Hot Seat.
Okay.
So these are going to be some quick fire questions. I just want, your gut response on these so that people can get a sense of kind of how you think and who you are. So first, how do you deal with indecision these days?
I would say, with the help of my husband, I am like a dreamer. I am, as you can probably tell, I'm up in the clouds and dreaming, and he brings me back to life, and so brings me back down to earth, and so we kind of do that together. And yeah, so I would say together with my husband.
So how do you prioritize your own happiness in your life?
Oh my gosh, happiness is key. As we've talked about during this episode, I was in a place of being so unhappy, and I saw what it did to me, what it did to my relationships, and what it did to my health. And so I was kind of put in the position that, I had to learn that I had to prioritize my happiness or things were not going to go well. And so now it is something I absolutely prioritize. And you know what? I think it's okay to absolutely prioritize that because, we only have one life, and you might as well be happy and work towards your happiness.
So what specific mindset shift transformed your life?
Mine was to stop caring so much about what other people think of me. I've always been a people pleaser, and I've always cared so much about what people thought about me and the steps that I took. And I kind of had to let that go. And that's been huge for me.
That's a really good one. So can you name a book that inspires you or has inspired your journey?
Yes. Okay. So I recently read it's called To Shake the Sleeping Self, and it's written by Jedediah Jenkins, who is a former lawyer who actually left the law and biked from Oregon to Patagonia. And it's about his journey. It was like a year and a half that he biked. And it's an incredible book. And so obviously there's a lot of parallels for my story. So that's been a really great read for me.
And that was To Shake Your...
It's called To Shake the Sleeping Self.
To Shake the Sleeping Self. Awesome. I'm jotting that down because I'm obsessed with books and I love to read.
Oh my gosh. It's such a good one. Really, really great book. He's a great storyteller.
Fantastic. So last question is, what do you think separates happy lawyers from lawyers who struggle to find happiness in life with a law degree?
I think, first of all, having a practice that aligns with your traits and your specific interests and skills. For me, that disconnect was really a problem. I was in litigation and I hated the adversarial nature. It didn't feel genuine to me. And that was a real problem for me. But certain lawyers that I worked with really excelled in litigation and loved it because it aligned with their unique traits. And the other thing I think is boundaries. I worked for some lawyers who were really, really great at setting boundaries and, saying, one lawyer I worked for, she went to Europe for 3 weeks and left her practice and said, you can only call me for absolute emergencies. And she really prioritized and set boundaries on family time and time away from work, but she worked really hard when she was at work. And then, I worked for other lawyers who gave all of their clients their cell phone numbers and said, call me at any time, any day of the week, and would, set aside family dinners to work on what a client may have thought was an emergency. And I get that there's absolutely certain situations where your family time or personal time might have to be sacrificed for client demands. But I think there's a balance in setting boundaries for your personal life and what you will let from your practice seep into.
I love that. I always say that your leaky boundaries will drown you. Yeah. And I think that people think they're good at setting boundaries, but it's always those excuses they make around their boundaries. Like they say, I don't work on vacation except for, I don't take dinners, except for, and that'll get you every time. So
those except fors just keep coming up because, everything can be an emergency. And the people that I've seen are happier are the people who are better at setting boundaries.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So as we wrap up, I like to try to introduce a listener question to the show so that it doesn't feel as much like I'm talking into my computer as much as like there's a people out there who are listening. So I got a question for you from a Casey. And Casey asked on Instagram, when do you think is early enough to leave the career?
As early as possible. For me, I was in practice for 3 years, but they were 3 pretty unhappy years. And while I grew a lot and I'm ultimately happy for my experience, like I maybe should have left right away when I realized that maybe the law wasn't for me. As we've talked about earlier in the episode, I think if you are unhappy and if you aren't able to practice in a way that is best for your clients, I think you need to start thinking about a career change. Because there are so many opportunities for lawyers, whether it's to transition to another part of practice or to transition out of the law. There are so many ways that you can use your unique skills and the ways that in which you bring value to the world, that a transition should start as soon as you're thinking about it and as soon as it makes financial sense for you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that once you get your law degree, that in itself has value, and what you do with it kind of is just up to you. And it's hard to answer, what's the best way to use my JD to do X. You kind of have to do that research and figure out what you want to do with that degree. There's not a formula for an amount of time that, after 3 years, you've kind of gotten all the value you can get. And after that, it kind of plateaus or anything like that. So I agree that once you have to be thoughtful in your career about what you're trying to get out of it, what you're trying to get out of your JD, what you're trying to get out of your first job. And that's something I've always been very conscious of. And I always advise people to be conscious of is, even if you're not happy in the job you're in right now, what are the relationships you could be building or the skill sets you could be developing that you could use in the job that would make you happy? And as long as you're preparing for that next job, once you find it, you'll be ready to leap at it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, we think of law school as an investment of time and, but if you went to law school, you already went to law school. Those 3 years have already been spent. That investment has already been made. And there isn't you're right. There isn't a formula for what you need to do to get a return on that investment. You need to think about what you want your career to ultimately look like and how you want to influence others and what you want to bring to this world and what skills you have that enable you to do that. And if those don't align with your current career, then I think the time is now to start exploring other options.
Absolutely. So last thing, what's the best way for people to follow your project and learn about what you're up to?
Yes. So we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Remarkable Golden. And we have a website, theremarkablegolden.com, that I am working on, and we'll have a podcast and a blog up and running and closer to when the project starts. But the best way now is via social media at The Remarkable Golden. And people can also follow along at Leave Law Behind. That is, as I said, I help Casey with the social media for that. And so people can keep track of that project that way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And for all of you who are on your commute or at the gym or on a run, I will have all of those social media links on the website at thehappylawyerproject.com. So if you guys didn't catch that all here, you can grab it over there. Thank you so much, Veronica, for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. And if you got value out of this episode and you think there's someone else who might enjoy it, I'd love for you guys to share. And if you have any questions for me, please head over to the website at thehappylawyerproject.com and you can leave me a voicemail right on the website. When you get there, you'll see a little tab on the right hand of the screen and you can click on it and leave a voicemail there. I absolutely love hearing from you guys. Last but not least, if you enjoy this podcast and you like the content that I'm bringing to you guys and you haven't done so already, I would really encourage you guys to head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and review. That's all for this week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening.